The red warning lights flashed across Jake Morrison's face as his cargo ship, the Stellar Hawk, shuddered violently. Sweat dripped down his forehead while he fought with the controls, trying to keep the dying vessel steady. The ship's computer kept repeating the same message over and over. Engine failure detected. Emergency landing required. "Come on, baby, hold together," Jake muttered, his knuckles white from gripping the control stick. He had been making this cargo run for 3 years now, but nothing like this had ever happened before. The ship wasn't just failing. Something felt wrong about how suddenly everything went dark. Through the cockpit window, he could see an unknown planet growing larger by the second. Its surface was mostly green and purple, with vast oceans of deep blue. If he was going to crash, at least it looked habitable. The ship's scanners showed breathable atmosphere before they too went dark. The Stellar Hawk entered the atmosphere like a burning meteor. Jake's teeth rattled as the ship broke through the upper layers, heat building up around the hull. Warning alarms screamed through the cabin. The temperature gauge was climbing into the red zone. "This is going to hurt," Jake said to himself, pulling back on the controls with all his strength. He needed to slow down enough to survive the landing. Years of pilot training kicked in as he fought against gravity and failing systems. Strange purple trees filled his view as the ship dropped below the clouded layer. They looked like Earth's pine trees, but their needles were various shades of purple instead of green. Jake had no time to admire the alien forest. He needed to find somewhere flat enough to crash land. He spotted a small clearing ahead. It wasn't ideal, but it was his only chance. Jake aimed the nose of the ship toward the gap in the trees. The ground rushed up to meet him as he cut power to the remaining engine and extended what was left of the landing gear. The impact was devastating. Metal screamed against Earth as the Stellar Hawk plowed through the purple vegetation. Jake's safety harness dug into his chest, knocking the wind out of him. His head snapped forward, then back against his seat. The ship's hull groaned and buckled as it skidded across the ground. When the ship finally stopped moving, Jake hung limply in his harness, fighting to stay conscious. His whole body ached, and he could feel blood trickling down the side of his face. The cabin was filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt electronics. With shaking hands, he unbuckled his harness and stumbled to the emergency kit behind his seat. The ship's main systems were dead, but the backup power gave him enough light to see. Jake pulled out the medical scanner and ran it over himself. 2 cracked ribs, a mild concussion, and various cuts and bruises. Nothing fatal, but it hurt like hell. The emergency beacon was his next priority. Jake found it crushed and useless. Another thing that seemed too convenient to be an accident. He was stranded on an unknown planet with no way to call for help. Looking through the cracked cockpit window, Jake saw the alien forest stretching out in every direction. The purple trees swayed in a light breeze, and strange bird-like creatures circled overhead. The air was breathable according to his portable scanner, but who knew what other surprises this world had in store? "Well," Jake said to the empty cabin, wincing as he touched his injured ribs, "I always wanted to explore new worlds. Guess I'll get my chance now." He gathered what supplies he could salvage and prepared to step out onto this alien world. Whatever happened next, he would need all his training and wit to survive. Jake limped through the alien forest, using a broken piece of his ship's hull as a walking stick. The purple trees towered above him, their leaves making strange whispers in the wind. He had been exploring for several hours, looking for water and anything that might be safe to eat. His emergency rations wouldn't last more than a week. The ship's food storage was destroyed in the crash, leaving him with only what was in his survival kit. Jake checked his portable scanner again. It showed several water sources nearby, but he needed to make sure it was safe to drink. Strange sounds echoed through the forest, clicks and whistles unlike any Earth animals. Jake kept his hand close to his emergency blaster. He didn't want to use it, but being stranded didn't mean being stupid. Who knew what kind of predators lived in this alien world? A movement caught his eye. Something had disturbed the brush ahead. Jake crouched behind a fallen tree, watching carefully. The scanner showed no large life forms, but technology could fail. He had learned that lesson the hard way with his ship. The brush moved again, and Jake held his breath. Through the purple leaves, he saw a flash of silvery skin. Then, to his amazement, a humanoid figure stepped into view. It was clearly female, but definitely not human. Her skin had a metallic sheen that shifted colors in the sunlight, and her large eyes were entirely silver with no visible pupils. She was gathering plants, putting them carefully into a woven basket. Jake noticed she wore simple clothes made from some kind of fabric that looked like silk but rougher. She moved with grace, but also uncertainty, often checking over her shoulder as if worried about being followed. Jake's foot slipped, sending a small rock tumbling down. The alien woman spun around, her silver eyes wide with fear. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Jake slowly raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "Hello," he said softly, knowing she probably wouldn't understand but hoping his tone would convey peace. "I'm not going to hurt you." The alien woman tilted her head, studying him with obvious curiosity. Instead of running away, she took a cautious step forward. She spoke, her voice musical and strange, with words Jake couldn't understand. Jake pointed to himself. "Jake," he said clearly. Then he gestured to her with an open palm, hoping she would understand the question. She touched her chest lightly. "Zara," she replied. Her voice had a slight echo to it, as if two people were speaking at once. Jake's ribs chose that moment to remind him of his injuries. He winced and grabbed his side, losing his balance. To his surprise, Zara rushed forward to help him. Her strength was surprising for her slender frame, as she helped him sit on a fallen tree. Zara pointed to his injuries with concern. She reached into her basket and pulled out some of the plants she had been gathering. Through gestures and gentle movements, she indicated that she wanted to help him. Jake nodded, realizing he had little choice. His medical supplies were limited, and he was clearly hurt worse than he thought. Zara began crushing some purple leaves between her hands. They released a sweet smell, like mint mixed with honey. She applied the crushed leaves to his cuts, her touch gentle but confident. The pain began to fade almost immediately. Jake looked at her with newfound respect. She clearly had medical knowledge. Zara smiled at him, a very human expression that made her alien features seem less strange. She spoke again, and though Jake couldn't understand the words, her tone was friendly and caring. As she treated his wounds, Jake noticed she kept looking nervously toward what he assumed was the direction of her home. Something was making her anxious, but she chose to stay and help him anyway. He wondered what kind of trouble helping a stranger might cause her. Over the next few days, Zara visited Jake's crash site regularly, always arriving when the purple sun was highest in the sky. She brought him food, strange fruits with blue flesh that tasted like a mix of strawberries and mint. Each visit, they learned more about each other through gestures and simple drawings in the dirt. Jake discovered that Zara was different from her people. While she treated him with kindness, she explained through pictures that her village feared outsiders. She drew circles representing her people, then drew them far away from a stick figure meant to be Jake. When she drew herself next to his figure, she made a sad face. "You're breaking rules by helping me, aren't you?" Jake asked, even though she couldn't understand his words. Zara seemed to get his meaning anyway, nodding slowly. Today, she sat cross-legged near his makeshift camp, watching with fascination as Jake worked on a damaged tablet from his ship. He had managed to get it working again, and the screen glowed with star charts and navigation data. "This is Earth," Jake said, pointing to his home planet on the display. "Where I come from." He then gestured to the surrounding forest. "And this is your world, but I don't know its name." Zara leaned forward, her silver eyes reflecting the tablet's light. She touched the screen gently, tracing the path of stars with her iridescent fingers. Then she began drawing in the dirt again. This time, she drew what looked like tall buildings, but with X marks through them. "Your people used to have technology. Jake asked, pointing to her drawings. Zara nodded. She drew more pictures, her people using machines, then something bad happening. Jake couldn't quite understand what. And finally, her people living simply in the forest. She pointed to the tablet, then made a pushing away motion. They rejected technology, Jake realized. But you're curious about it, aren't you? To answer, Zara pulled something from her bag. It was a small device, clearly ancient but similar in design to his tablet. She handled it like it was precious and forbidden, which Jake guessed it probably was. Jake gently took the device, examining it. The design was sophisticated but different from anything he'd seen. "Your people made this?" he asked, pointing to her and then the device. Zara shook her head. She pointed to the sky, then to the ground, then made a sleeping motion. Jake thought he understood. The technology was from long ago, buried and forgotten. While they studied the ancient device together, Jake showed Zara how his own technology worked. Her quick mind surprised him. She seemed to grasp concepts instantly, even with the language barrier. She was especially fascinated by his ship's medical scanner, comparing it to her own healing methods. As the purple sun began to set, Zara suddenly became anxious. She quickly packed her things, including the ancient device. Before leaving, she drew one last picture. Several angry faces and one pointing finger. Jake understood. Her people were growing suspicious of her absences. "Be careful," Jake said, touching her shoulder gently. Zara gave him a sad smile, understanding his concern even if not his words. She placed her hand over his for a moment, then hurried away into the darkening forest. Jake watched her go, feeling worried. He was healing well thanks to her care, but his presence was putting her in a difficult position. Through their simple communications, he had learned more about her world than he expected. But he had also learned that knowledge could be dangerous, especially to those who sought it when others wished it to stay buried. Jake woke to the sound of urgent whispers. It was still dark, but he could make out Zara's glowing silvery skin in the moonlight. She wasn't alone. Another of her kind stood with her, younger and clearly frightened. "Zara, what's wrong?" Jake asked, sitting up quickly. Zara made frantic gestures toward the sky. Her companion, who Jake guessed was her younger sister based on their similar features, pointed at Jake's crashed ship and then made explosion motions with her hands. Jake grabbed his tablet, which he'd managed to repair enough to scan for nearby spacecraft. His heart sank when he saw the readings. 3 ships had entered the system, and their design matched known pirate vessels. "They followed me," Jake muttered, checking his ship's damaged systems. When he accessed the engine logs, he finally saw what he had suspected: clear signs of sabotage. Someone had wanted him to crash here, on this specific planet. Zara touched his arm, drawing his attention. She had drawn something in the dirt, a circle with lines coming out of it, buried under triangles that looked like mountains. Then she drew the pirate ships above it, making it clear they were coming for whatever was buried. "They're after your people's ancient technology," Jake said, understanding dawning on his face. "My crash wasn't an accident. They used me to find this place." The younger alien girl suddenly made a high-pitched warning sound. In the distance, they could hear voices, angry voices, coming from the direction of the settlement. Zara's people had discovered her missing. Zara quickly erased her drawings with her foot. She grabbed Jake's hand and pulled him toward the dense forest. Her sister ran ahead, checking the path. They moved silently through the purple trees. Zara's people naturally adapted to moving without sound. They hadn't gone far when bright lights appeared in the night sky. The pirate ships were entering the atmosphere. Jake could hear their engines, far too close for comfort. Zara's sister made another warning sound and pointed toward a cliff face covered in vines. Zara pulled the vines aside, revealing the hidden cave entrance. Inside, Jake saw the gleam of old metal, covered in strange symbols he didn't recognize. This was no natural cave. It was an ancient facility of some kind. Shouts echoed through the forest. Zara's people were getting closer. Above, the pirate ship's searchlights swept the trees. They were trapped between two dangers. "We need to tell your people the truth," Jake said, touching Zora's shoulder. "About the pirates, about why I'm really here. They need to know what's coming." Zora looked torn. She made gestures showing her people's hatred of technology, their fear of outsiders. Then she pointed to the hidden facility and shook her head firmly. Jake checked his tablet again. The pirate ships were landing. 3 of them, all heavily armed according to his scans. He recognized the design now. Black Claw raiders, known for stripping planets of valuable technology and leaving nothing behind. Zora's sister gave another warning cry. Through the trees, they could see the lights of Zora's people approaching. At the same time, the sound of pirate ships landing gear echoed through the valley. "Time's up," Jake said grimly. "We have to make a choice now." Zora straightened her shoulders and nodded. She pointed to herself, then to Jake, then to the hidden facility. Finally, she pointed toward her approaching people. Her meaning was clear. They would face both dangers together. The night air filled with shouts and the whine of ships' engines. Whatever they decided, they had only moments to act. The peaceful days of learning about each other were over. Now it was time to survive. Zora made her decision quickly. She pushed Jake into the hidden facility, and her sister followed. Through the dim light filtering from the entrance, Jake saw an enormous chamber filled with dormant machinery. The walls glowed faintly with strange symbols, similar to those on the ancient device Zora had shown him. Angry voices approached the cave entrance. Zora stepped forward to face her people, her silver skin glowing with determination. Through the vines, Jake could see the village elders, their faces twisted with anger and holding bright torches. The eldest, wearing elaborate robes, pointed accusingly at Zora. Though Jake couldn't understand the words, the tone was clear. She had betrayed their laws. Zora spoke back, her musical voice strong and unwavering. She pointed to the sky where the pirate ship's lights blazed. "Let me help," Jake said, stepping out despite Zora's attempt to stop him. He held up his tablet, showing the scans of the pirate ships. "Your people are in danger. Real danger." The elders recoiled at his appearance, raising their staffs defensively. But before anyone could act, a deafening explosion rocked the forest. One of the pirate ships had fired a warning shot, lighting up the night sky with fierce orange flames. Zora's sister rushed forward, activating something on the wall of the facility. Ancient lights flickered to life, illuminating technology that had slept for generations. The elder's eyes widened in fear and awe. Jake pointed to his tablet again, making his meaning clear through gestures. 3 ships, heavy weapons. They're here for this, he said, pointing to the facility. And they won't care who gets hurt to get it. Another explosion, closer this time. Trees crashed in the distance, and strange alien birds took flight in panic. The pirates were making their presence known, trying to frighten the inhabitants. Zora spoke rapidly to her people, pointing to the facility's walls. Jake noticed she was indicating specific symbols. She understood more about this place than she had revealed. Her sister joined in, drawing the elders' attention to particular markings that made their eyes go wide with recognition. The eldest elder stepped forward, studying Jake carefully. He spoke slowly, and Zora translated through gestures. They knew of this day. It had been prophesied that outsiders would return, both friend and foe. The choice would be whether to embrace the old ways to fight the new threat. "Your ancestors," Jake said, pointing to the machinery, then to the elders. "They left this here to protect you. They must have known someone would come looking for it eventually." As if confirming his words, the ground shook with another explosion. This time, screams echoed from the direction of the settlement. The pirates were not waiting any longer. The eldest elder closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he nodded slowly to Zora. She immediately began pressing symbols on the wall in a specific sequence. The facility hummed to life, panels sliding open to reveal more chambers, more technology. Jake's tablet suddenly connected to something. An ancient but powerful computer system. Symbols flashed across his screen, then transformed into readable text. Defense grid status. Standby. Zara touched Jake's arm, pointing to the translated text with excitement. Through gestures, she explained that her people hadn't abandoned technology because they feared it. They had hidden it, preserved it, waiting for the day it would be needed. The eldest elder stepped forward and placed his hand on a large central panel. More lights activated, and a holographic map appeared, showing the settlement, the pirate ships, and dozens of defensive positions Jake hadn't noticed before. They had a chance now, but only if they could reactivate the ancient defenses in time. The real question was, after generations of hiding this power, would Zara's people remember how to use it? Deep inside the ancient facility, Jake worked quickly with Zara to understand the defense systems. His tablet translated the alien text, while Zara's knowledge of the old symbols helped them navigate the complex machinery. The pirates were getting closer. They could hear the sound of laser fire above. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to a diagram that appeared on his screen. The facility's map showed a network of defensive turrets hidden throughout the forest. They were covered by generations of growth, but still functional. Zara's sister ran in, speaking rapidly. Through her gestures, Jake understood that the pirates had reached the settlement's outer edges. They were using scan equipment, searching for the energy signatures of the ancient technology. The eldest elder watched as Jake and Zara worked, his earlier anger replaced by grim determination. He spoke softly to Zara, who turned to Jake and mimicked walking motions, then pointed to the ceiling. "They want me to help reconnect the surface defenses," Jake realized. He nodded, checking his emergency blaster. "I'll go. You keep working here." Zara grabbed his arm, shaking her head. She pointed to herself, then to Jake, then made a motion of joining hands. The meaning was clear. They would go together. Her sister would stay with the elders to continue activating the facility's systems. They emerged from the hidden entrance into chaos. The purple forest was lit by fires from the pirates' weapons. Jake could see their armored figures moving through the trees, pushing toward the settlement. They wore the black and red colors of the Black Claw Raiders. Zara led Jake through hidden paths to the first defense turret. It was covered in purple vines, looking like nothing more than an old tree stump. But when Zara pressed her hand to a specific spot, panels slid open, revealing advanced technology. Jake connected his tablet to the turret's systems. Years of working with ship's computers helped him understand the basic principles. "It needs power," he whispered. "The main facility must send the activation signal." A pirate patrol passed nearby. Jake and Zara pressed themselves against the turret, barely breathing. The pirates' scan equipment beeped softly, but the thick vegetation seemed to confuse their readings. Zara's sister must have succeeded in the facility. The turret suddenly hummed to life under Jake's hands. Lights flickered on inside its ancient circuits, and targeting systems began to warm up. "One down," Jake said with a smile. "How many more?" Zara held up 7 fingers. She pointed to different spots around the settlement where other turrets were hidden. They would have to reach each one before the pirates found the facility. They moved through the forest like shadows, Zara's natural stealth helping them avoid detection. At each turret, Jake's technical skills and Zara's knowledge of the activation points brought the ancient weapons online. But at the 6th turret, things went wrong. A pirate scanner picked up their activity. "Over there," a rough voice shouted. Laser fire cut through the darkness. Jake pulled Zara behind the turret as shots hit the ground around them. This turret wasn't active yet. They were trapped. Zara pointed urgently to a specific panel that needed to be opened. "Cover me," Jake said, hoping she understood. He had to expose himself to reach the panel. Zara nodded and picked up a fallen branch. When the pirates moved closer, she threw it far to their left, making them turn toward the sound. Jake lunged for the panel, fingers working quickly to make the connections. Laser fire scorched the ground beside him. Just as a pirate came around the turret, the ancient weapon powered up. Its targeting systems activated automatically, and the pirates scattered as it came to life. One turret remained, but now the pirates knew they were out there. The race to activate the final defense had begun. The final turret stood atop a small hill overlooking the settlement. Jake and Zara crouched in the underbrush, watching pirates patrol the area. They had clearly figured out what the two of them were doing and had concentrated their forces here. "We need a distraction," Jake whispered, more to himself than to Zara since she couldn't understand him. But Zara seemed to read his mind. She pointed to herself, then to a cluster of pirates, then made a running motion away from the turret. Jake shook his head firmly. Too dangerous. He held up his blaster, suggesting he should be the one to draw their fire. Before either could act, a loud hum filled the air. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Back at the facility, Zora's sister and the elders had activated something big. The pirates felt it too. Their scanners were going crazy, beeping wildly as they tried to locate the power source. Zara touched Jake's arm and pointed. Young members of her settlement were emerging from the forest, armed with their traditional hunting weapons. They moved silently through the trees, surrounding the pirates who were too focused on their scanners to notice. Jake understood. The younger generation was no longer willing to hide. They were fighting for their home. The first attack came without warning. A net made of strange, glowing fibers dropped onto two pirates, tangling them. As their companions turned to help, more traps sprang. The young hunters emerged, throwing spears that crackled with energy, weapons that mixed their traditional crafts with ancient technology. "Now's our chance," Jake said, grabbing Zora's hand. They sprinted toward the turret while the pirates were distracted. Laser fire filled the air, but the hunters were quick and difficult to hit as they ducked between the trees. They reached the turret, and Zara quickly found the hidden panel. Jake connected his tablet, fingers flying over the screen as he tried to activate the ancient weapon. But something was wrong. The power wouldn't flow. A shot hit the turret near Jake's head. 3 pirates had spotted them and were closing in. Zara picked up a fallen pirate's weapon, awkwardly trying to provide cover fire while Jake worked. Come on," Jake muttered, trying different combinations. His tablet showed that power was reaching the turret, but something was blocking it. Then he noticed markings around the base, different from the other turrets. Zara saw them too. Her eyes widened with recognition. She pressed her hand to the markings, and her silver skin began to glow. The symbols lit up in response to her touch. This turret needed more than just power. It needed the blood of the original builders, Zora's ancestors. The turret hummed to life, more powerfully than any of the others. It wasn't just a weapon. It was the control hub for the entire defense network. Holographic displays sprang up around them, showing the position of every pirate on their land. In the facility below, Zora's sister must have seen the activation. All 7 turrets powered up to full strength, their targets locked on the pirate ships still hovering above the settlement. The pirates realized too late what was happening. Energy beams lanced from the turrets, catching the pirate ships in a crossfire. The raiders tried to flee, but the ancient weapons were too powerful. One by one, the ships crashed into the forest, well away from the settlement. The remaining pirates on the ground threw down their weapons. The young hunters emerged fully from the forest, surrounding them. Zara stood tall beside Jake, her silver skin still glowing with power, a bridge between her people's past and future. As the sun rose over the purple forest, the settlement had changed forever. The elders and the young stood together. Their world's ancient strength awakened once more. A week after the battle, the settlement had changed dramatically. The hidden facility was no longer secret, its entrance now marked with traditional decorations. Young and old worked together, carefully learning about their ancestors' legacy while keeping their cherished traditions. Jake stood at his crashed ship, packing the few belongings he could salvage. A rescue beacon now broadcasted from the settlement's ancient communication array. Help would arrive within days. The captured pirates were secured in holding cells, waiting to face justice for their crimes. He heard soft footsteps behind him and turned to see Zora approaching. Her silver skin gleamed in the morning light, but something was different. She wore a combination of her people's traditional robes and pieces of the ancient technology. Around her neck hung a translator, one of many devices they have found in the facility. "You are leaving soon?" she asked, her voice clear through the translator. Jake still found it strange to hear her speaking his language, but it made his heart warm. "My people will send a ship," Jake replied, nodding. "They'll want to establish proper contact with your settlement now that you're reconnecting with technology." Zara touched the vine-covered hull of his ship. "Our elders say you brought change that was destined to come. The prophecy spoke of a star-fallen friend who would help us remember our true path." Jake smiled. "I think you were already on that path. You were curious about the old ways even before I crashed here. You weren't afraid to learn, to question." "The Council has asked me to lead the integration program," Zora said proudly, "to help our people find balance between tradition and progress. My sister will help teach the young ones about our ancient technology." A group of children ran past, chasing each other with toy versions of the defense turrets, made from wood and decorated with glowing symbols. The elders watched from nearby, no longer angry but thoughtful as they saw the old and new mixing together. "Will you return?" Zara asked, her silver eyes meeting his. "We could use a teacher who understands star travel and outside technology, someone who respects our ways while helping us grow." Jake looked at his ship, then at the settlement. The purple forest that had once seemed so alien now felt almost like home. "Actually, I've been thinking about that. My cargo runs were getting pretty lonely. If your council would accept me, I'd like to stay. Help build something new here." Zora's skin glowed brightly with joy, her people's way of showing strong emotion. "The council has already approved. They say any friend who would fight for our people has earned a place among us." The sound of children laughing mixed with the hum of ancient machinery. Young hunters practiced with their new hybrid weapons, while elders taught ancient songs that explained how to use the old technology. The settlement was finding its own unique path forward. "Besides," Jake said with a smile, "someone needs to teach your people how to maintain those defense turrets properly. Can't have them breaking down if more pirates show up." Zara took his hand, her silver skin shimmering against his. "Our ancestors knew that staying hidden forever wasn't the answer. They waited for the right time, the right way to emerge. You helped us find that way." Together, they walked toward the settlement, leaving the crashed ship behind. Jake looked up at the purple trees swaying in the breeze, at the young ones playing with their mix of old and new toys, at the ancient facility now alive with activity. Sometimes the best discoveries in life came from being lost. Sometimes finding your way meant helping others find theirs. As Zara led him toward his new home, Jake knew he had finally found where he belonged, on a world where tradition and progress danced together under purple leaves.